Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
What up, what up? I got a solo episode for you guys today. I'm incredibly excited about this one because I believe that what I'm about to go through with you guys is the single biggest game changer in door-to-door since the canvassing app. And so if you guys know about the canvassing app, this was the first time that you could basically log, the doors that you were knocking in your phone, instead of on a piece of paper and transfer that piece of paper to a spreadsheet or whatever the case was. So when the canvassing apps came out, that was a huge, huge deal in door-to-door. And it cut down time and money spent on evaluating turf. And so, and you guys also know, I think this is probably going to be episode number 249, 250, something like that, or maybe 240s. But anyways, I don't really pitch products. You know what I mean? I don't have commercials. I pitch my own shit, obviously. But this is somebody else's stuff. I came across this on LinkedIn, and they cold messaged me, so cold messaging on LinkedIn works, guys, especially in B2B. So I was just blown away. One of my clients literally got it the same week. So let me walk through the need for the app that I'm about to show you guys. So when it comes to door-to-door sales training, you've got a script. You've got probably some objections training that's going to go over the different objections you get and how you can overcome them. You've got product knowledge. You've probably got multiple intros. And then if you're in multiple cities or multiple states, you've got multiple markets, right? And so you've got to change your pitch for each market. If you're doing shared solar, forget it. You've got a different pitch for every utility, And so, and then your business evolves, the product evolves, so the pitch changes because of that, as well as the script changes. So when I think about my 15 years in door-to-door, one of the biggest things that I always had a pulse on is when I needed to change my training. And that's why whenever I develop a sales program for a client, it's going to be a quarterly setup. Everything has the ability to change quarterly, and you need to be auditing quarterly. This is why I love EOS so much, because they operate in quarters. And so you're able to basically go in and look at the business at a high level using EOS and breaking down your rocks for the quarter and evaluate them. And then you can reverse the data all the way down to the pitch. And you can just say, okay, we need to, push this product more in our pitch so we have a higher retention rate, higher quality. And, we're not going to get higher gross revenue, but we're going to have less chargebacks, so we're going to end up keeping more of our money throughout the year. These are little tweaks you can make on a quarterly basis to increase your bottom line, right? And so, all that being said, this training needs to be updated at a minimum quarterly. If you have multiple markets, if something with the utility changes, if something with your installer changes, you constantly have an ever-evolving, ever-changing sales program, but more specifically, the training within that sales program, right? So it creates this, if you're even probably a 10-man team, if you're doing $1 million plus, you almost have to have a position in your company, unless the owner is constantly working on the business like I was. You almost have to have a position in your company that is nothing but development, basically a development director, if you will, just to keep the training up to par. And that doesn't even include the natural evolution of the skills of your company. You know what I mean? Like, as y'all get better, you're going to use better terms, better phrases, better ways to overcome objections. You're going to be more educated. So you're going to update your training because of that. But some of you are still using the same pitch you got on the first door you ever knocked. I know you are. You know what I'm saying? And it's photocopied 20 different times. Don't think I don't know. I know. All right. Because I saw that crap come into my office all the time. And I was like, man, you can't take the time to rewrite it in Word if you're going to plagiarize somebody else's pitch. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, I digress. Okay. So the reason I'm setting all this up and really going deep and explaining this, but they have kept developing it so well. And so the reason that I'm impressed so much with this app is because I feel like it's new. Maybe I'm wrong. So some of the bigger personalities in door to door I'm seeing have already have access to it. Their teams have access to it. It's relatively new on the scene from what I've seen, and they just got another round of funding too to continue developing it. But what I'm impressed by is only after maybe a couple years in development, what they've produced already. And naturally, it's because they're from door to door, and that helps so much when you're developing an app like this. So the app, and if you guys are watching on YouTube or on my live, you're going to be able to see this. The app is going to be Siro. Okay, and so it's the basics of what you think it is. It's going to record your pitches for playback training. It's the and the functionality, the way it works in the field, and this is probably my favorite part about it is it's passive. So right now, if you are recording pitches, you're probably using memos or something like that. And every time you go to a door, you got to remember to record and to stop recording. And there is no, if you're transcribing, you're going to probably use a VA to transcribe, or you're dropping it into Otter and transcribing there, whatever the case is. But there's all these steps, right? So with this, it has door to door mode. And so you click door to door mode on, you hit record, you put it in your pocket, and you go. You start hitting the doors. Okay. Now, if you got, obviously the shirt pocket's going to be the best because it's going to leave the mic open. It's not going to be muffled or anything, but you drop it right there. You start hitting the doors, and using AI technology, it is going to know when you start pitching and when you finish pitching. So right away, it's going to start cataloging your pitches for you. Okay. So normally you may do two or three of these a day if your company has, recording policies in place. Now, if you pitch 30 times a day, you're going to have 30 catalog pitches ready to roll and ready to review. So that is the very basics of what it does. Let's go into 2.0. Okay. They have what they call moments. So it analyzes the best moments and pitches based on how the sales rep overcomes them and whether or not they close a sale. Okay. So this becomes game film powered by AI, which it just gets super sexy and super insane at this point. So it breaks down the highest close rate based on moments, right? So if I use like the owning your energy analogy on a solar sale, it catalogs that moment, and then it goes across 100 other reps, and when they use that as well, it catalogs that. All right. And then it cross evaluates the close rate based on when you use that analogy, or if you use that analogy. And so now we know anytime I use that analogy, I have a 10% higher close rate than if I don't. So this is, you guys know I'm a freak about data. I'm a freak about analytics and systems and processes, right? And so again, what I love about this is what I used to spend hours and hours laboring over spreadsheets for, you're getting in real time. You're getting it in real time, which is just insane to me. We all knew this was coming. Once ChatGPT came out and everybody got hot on it, we knew that the evolution of AI in general, ChatGPT is just scratching the surface, right? But this is incredibly amazing, right? Okay, so let's keep going into it. Um, you know, these moments take a little further, and obviously, one of the biggest things you want to train on in door to door is overcoming objections. You are going to get it an objection. It's just how many, right? And so it's going to break down the highest close rate based on the moments, and then the ways you use to overcome those objections, right? And so if you have reps struggling with certain objections, and you hear it all the time, oh, nobody wants to put 60 grand on. That's 12 times they're getting that objection, and 12 times they're attempting to overcome it. Now imagine this. Each time they overcome it, there's a little ding there, and then it goes into a folder. And I'm gonna butcher a lot of this. I'm gonna have the founders of Siro come on the show here in a couple weeks and do this thing justice. But I'm just too freaking excited about it right now. So I decided to release my own episode on it. But I want to hear their story too. So anyways, so now you got reps logging in and clicking on those moments, which is the interest rate is too high, objection. They click on it, and now they've got the top 5 recordings with the best ways to overcome that objection. Then they get to listen to it, they get to see the transcribed notes on it, and they get to train on it in real time. So, and here's what I love about it too, and I don't think I have talked about this with anybody yet, but all of a sudden, one of the greatest things about the canvassing app, if you were an owner, right? Not if you were a sales rep, if you were an owner, one of the greatest things about the canvassing app is you could see the pins that they're dropping. And then some of the apps, like Sales Rabbit has a location tracking feature, right? And so this becomes especially important when you're issuing like an iPad or something like that. And one of the greatest things about that was it created accountability, right? And the sales reps try to hack it. They try to sit at their house and drop pins when they weren't even knocking, that whole deal. And I get it. There's two types of door-to-doors teams. There's the year-round ones that have high turnover and have sales reps that are only going to work 2 or 3 days a week. And then you've got the summer ones or the traveling ones that they're gun ho. They're the best reps you can find. And they're going at it and they don't need accountability. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong. I know that it's not always like that. But anyways, my point being, I always had the year round guys. I always had the guys with families. I always had the guys with, excuses and stuff like that. And very little accountability out in the field until we got Sales Rabbit and we were able to use that geolocation tracking because we were issuing iPads. And so it created this layer of accountability, right? And so that's one layer, but the new layer, right? Because you know that they're physically out there, but being physically out there to the deal is a very big gap, right? Now with this technology with Siro, you can you can start tracking controllable actions like time at the door, the amount of pitches they made, the number of no's they got before they gave up on the door. All this data is available to you and your management team as an owner or as a trainer, as a manager. And so when somebody comes to you and says, I knocked 100 doors today, now it's not just about, because I would die on that sword. If you knock 100 doors, you're going to make good money with this company. I would die on that sword, and it was 80 doors for us. But, anyways, I would die on that sword and I would push that so hard. But now it takes it a step further and can analyze if you knock 80 doors and you get 7 no's, you are going to have this close rate as long as you use these ways to overcome your objections, and you're going to end up with X result. Now, the controllable actions, there's a bridge between the controllable action and the result. And there's data in between there to prove it every single time. All you have to do is answer like this, knock this many doors, and you're going to make 100 grand a year, 200 grand a year, 300 grand a year. You guys don't understand how amazing this is. So, one of the questions is, sounds awesome. Are there any legal restrictions on recording? That's a great question. I'm going to ask the founders whenever they tell us that. But I think the only legal restriction is you can't repurpose it and for public use. You can't repurpose it for legal use. It has to be for internal use only. So I can record all my conversations all day long as long as they don't see the light of day, if that makes sense. And as long as they aren't used against me, because then that becomes I was recorded without my knowledge kind of thing. And so that's my assumption, but that is a great question for me to ask whenever I have Siro on the podcast. So thank you for that. So it takes the guesswork out of what works, right? We can push our guys putting the time in the field. We can push controllable actions. The amount of doors that they knock. We don't know if they physically knock the door. We know if they drop a pin now because of canvassing apps. But now we know how long they're spending at the door, how many times they're getting told no, how many what objections they're using. And so it's like, as a trainer, when they would come back in the office the next day and give you all the reasons that they didn't make a sale. Now, when they come back in the office next day, your trainers can come in a half hour early, listen to their recordings, and have a training ready to go for them when they walk in based on what they actually said versus how many doors they knocked and how much time they spent in the field, which is the only thing they really knew. So bridging that gap, that visibility into what they're actually saying at the door, but using AI to compress the amount of time I have to listen to it and compress, and transcribe it so I can go and search to see if they're using these terms or these ways to overcome objections. It's next level. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I say that this is the most revolutionary advancement since the canvassing app. It 100% is. And I would argue that this is more important than the canvassing app now. I would argue that so much because so many times, in terms of knowing where guys worked and stuff like that, obviously you can do that through this app to a degree. It's not a canvassing app, and I know they have a canvassing feature. But I'm just trying to make a point here. If I had a choice between a canvassing app and Siro, I would take Siro all day because my guys are going to be assassins at the door because they're going to be using exactly what works in real time, not what worked a year ago or last quarter, whatever the case was. They're going to be using what works today in real time. So here's where it gets even a little more sexy, if it's possible, right? And so in industries like shared solar with varying programs and varying utilities, deregulated energy, even just different markets from 8-mile radius to 8-mile radius, the prospects change, the attitudes change, the culture changes in every neighborhood, right? And so what this is doing is you can isolate somebody's data per market, per square miles area, designated market area is what we always used in the past. So you can give them just access to those recordings and those trainings and that data. And so they are only working with the stuff for their state, for their utility, for whatever campaign they're working at the time. You've got your general training, it's always going to be good, but you got your market specific training too. So that's going to be massive in utilizing this, right? And I think specifically for shared solar companies or companies that are selling shared solar, that's going to be huge. Okay. So one of the last feature that I want to tell you guys about, and one of my favorite ones, is going to be the Siro GPT. It works just like Chat GPT, very similar, but this is preloaded, I believe, with content from door-to-door experts and door-to-door university. If that's not happening yet, it's going to happen. And so your reps are able to go into Siro GPT, which is within the app. It's just another tab in the app, and ask it questions about, what is the best strategy for knocking, 40 homes all day? How many loops should I take? When should I go to callbacks and all that kind of stuff? Or some of the general training on how do I overcome the decision maker disagreement, or the spousal objection, whatever the case is. All that training is there at their fingertips versus in a catalog library where I've got to go through and find it, right? And so it'll actually spit back to you phrases, sales pitches, all that good stuff for anything that university has in there. And so the first thing I'm thinking is like, well, yeah, that's cool, right? But how do I get Siro GPT to give me access to my data, my recordings, my training, so I can ask it a question like, what is the best way to overcome, the interest rate objection for our company versus, the world, right? For specifically for our company, what's working in our company right now, and then they can spit that back to me. Now that's going to be really cool because then I don't have to go and look for it and know how to navigate the app. I can just go to my Siro GPT, which is really my sales trainer, right? And so that gets us into the last part of the conversation that I want to. It's a leap forward if you don't have one because now you're not only affecting the way people sell, affecting the way that they overcome objections, that they represent your product, that they represent your company in your normal training, but you're also impacting the way that people train, which impacts the way that your company sells, you know? And so what happens is every trainer's different, just like every pitch is different at the door, right? Everybody's got their own style and their own cadence, whatever the case is. And so what Zero is going to do for us long term, and I'm putting this out there so that they get it done, is they're creating a trainer inside of an app. And and don't get me wrong, there's nothing replacing shadowing at the door, right? But you can take the hours that you need to shadow someone in order to learn how to sell a product from like 20 hours to 2. 'Cause you only need to see a few pitches live. Beyond that, the new trainer that you have in your app is is the best salesman in your company because they're only using the best pitches, the best rebuttals, the best closes because they're using the AI is using data to back it up. So in my mind, this is going to minimize the workload on the trainers and the sales managers in training the new people coming into the company. It's going to minimize that workload. The first way that we did it was documented training processes. Now, the second way we're going to do it is through AI, where it's going to be more important that they spend time with that AR trainer than they spend time with their real trainer. And I know it goes against just our human code, right? But it's real because that AI trainer is right 100% of the time because they're working. And granted, if they have a big enough data sample, obviously, if they're starting from scratch, it's not going to be the case. They need a big enough data sample to pull from before you start using an AI trainer. But that's what we're getting to. And so let me tell you what this, you recognize what it does for salespeople. It gets them trained better and faster, right? You recognize what it does for sales trainers. It minimizes the amount of work that they have to do. It bridges the knowledge gap. And it bridges the knowledge gap outside of field time. One of the things that trainers always complain about is having to slow down for the trainee and then the trainee quitting the next day. And now they could have got 5 sales a day before instead of 3, but they felt like they had to go slower because they're training in between doors and all that good stuff, right? So if it normally takes 3 days to train someone in the field for a trainer, and now it takes 1 because they have to go through modules and courses within the Siro app that teach them, all the training that they would normally learn out in the field in those other 2 days, then we're bringing their workload down. And as an owner in the company, especially in door-to-door sales, everything that you're doing is around the quality, or I'm sorry, the income per rep, as well as the scalability of your company, right? So if you want to go from 1 million to 5 million, you've got to have an incredibly scalable company. You got to have training systems, processes, management in place to be able to do that. And one of those big things is recruiting, right? And so now your leaders in your company can spend less time training and more time recruiting new people into the company, and you can scale faster, right? That's one piece of it. But what you're also going to be able to do is right now, like a trainer, typically, maybe an assistant manager, maybe a manager, regional manager, all that good stuff. They're all getting paid overrides. And they're getting paid overrides at the trainer and the assistant manager level because of the time that they spend with that rep in the beginning. Because they lost money training them, they spent a bunch of time with them, and they worked a lot harder than they normally would have just selling, you know. And so they get those overrides because they develop that person and they continue to develop them, manage them, and lead them, right? If you're able to outsource that training to AI to a degree, you know, we know it's not there yet where you can outsource the whole thing. Now, all of a sudden, you can lower your overrides that you're paying them on that. And this is real talk. Some people aren't going to like this, you know what I'm saying? But you got to think like an owner. You can lower the amount of money they're going to get on overrides because they're not spending all this time on training, right? And you can increase the amount of money they get when they recruit people into the company. You can increase the amount of money they can get when they open up new markets. You know what I'm saying? You can move that money to scale versus to training, right? Now you're already going to do that to a degree because Siro costs money. It is an expensive app. Straight up, it is what it is. I mean, look at what it can do. You know what I'm saying? This is not, if you're thinking sales rep pricing, sorry, it's not the case. It's probably about double, if not triple, okay, per user. And so, but you know, when I first saw the price, I was kind of taken aback a little bit. And it's like, this is like a Sales Rabbit add-on, you know? Why would it be more than Sales Rabbit? And then as I went through the rest of the demo and understood what it can actually do, and now that I'm breaking it down for this podcast, I know it's 100% worth it. Because now, again, you can move that money from training pay, overrides, and the time and energy your trainer spends on that to selling, back to selling, and they're going to make more money selling individually, right? But you can move it back to selling. You can move it more to recruiting. You can move it more to management, which is going to enable your company to scale faster. Aside from the way you're going to be able to scale faster because your training is so much better. It does. It turns all your trainers into almost expert level trainers immediately once your data sample is big enough that Siro has taken, right? So I wanted to get this out to you guys as soon as possible. Probably, I believe next week I have a recording set up with some of the founders of Siro, and we're going to walk through the origination of this product and then some of the questions that you guys had today about legal restrictions on recording. That's a great question. So I'm definitely going to bring that to them. I appreciate you guys as always. If y'all need anything, of course, reach out. This is the Building Great Sales Teams podcast, and let's get building.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. As always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you consume podcasts. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, Building Great Sales Teams, so you can get daily tips on how to get your sales team built, brick by brick. We'll see you there.